In recent times, speculative biology has gained a massive influx of popularity. This has resulted in several independent creative efforts in the form of ongoing projects and thought experiments. There's seemingly an endless stream of these that have emerged, especially in the last few years. But one that I've taken a recent interest in is that from a friend of mine, who goes by her online moniker Frilly Flovaquin. Frilly took this popular concept of an alternate world where certain prehistoric animals never went extinct, and decided to use it for something different. Instead of using dinosaurs, as traditionally seen in a lot of these independent thought experiments, she decided to posit the question, what if plesiosaurs never went extinct? What resulted was what she calls the Cetacean Alternative. In this thought experiment, plesiosaurs continued to live after the extinction of the dinosaurs, and as a result, have continued to evolve and survive all the way to modern day. And as the name entails, due to their survival, they would fill in the niche of cetaceans, which are the group of aquatic mammals comprised of dolphins, whales, and porpoises. That means they would continue to thrive alongside humans, who in many instances have affected their way of life. The project goes through several aspects of modern plesiosaurs, which in this world are referred to as cetopians. These aspects includes their lifestyles, adaptations, behaviors, impact on their ecosystems and environments, and even their depictions in modern pop culture. There's a lot to go into, and I don't think I'll be able to fit every piece of information on her site in this video, so I highly recommend checking out the website of this project yourself if you want to know more about it. But before we get into this, as always, I want to talk a little bit about the creator of the project. Frilly is a massive nerd. Her interests span throughout a range of mediums, but in regards to her more creative efforts, she's done several personal writing and world-building projects. In the context of the Cetacean Alternative, according to her site, for a long time she has been interested in the concept of speculative evolution, with her first creations being bat wyverns that she quotes, "shall never be seen in the public eye." But eventually, her consumption of a wide range of media that featured the same line of speculative biology content would ultimately inspire her project. This would include works like Alien Planet from the Discovery Channel, The Future is Wild from Animal Planet, the After Man book trilogy by Dougal Dixon, the Quintaglio Ascension book trilogy by Robert J. Sawyer, The Time Machine and War of the World novels by H.G. Wells, Serena, A Natural History of the World of Birds by Dylan Bajda, and so on. She would go on to participate in several small-scale speculative evolution projects with friends on Discord servers, but eventually, she wanted to move on to doing her own thing. So, in the span of almost 2 years, she would create a new passion project of hers, the Cetacean Alternative. According to the site, this project delves into the evolutionary pathways and ecological niches filled by these piscangids, a family in the order Cetophiae, which itself is a very diverse order including families and subfamilies that fill the roles of pinnipeds and various other ecological niches, which include dolos, tikos, and hemots. Through detailed descriptions, taxonomic classifications, and notable depictions in media, the Cetacean Alternative gives a scenario on how these forms may look and react in a modern setting after taking the roles and niches that cetaceans rule in our own reality. As far as to why she chose Plesiosaurs for this project, she does give a brief answer on her site, simply stating, why not? But, curious as I am, I wanted to see if she would elaborate more on this when I sat down and did a little text interview with her. Asking her why she chose plesiosaurs was my first question. Her response reads, "Plesiosaurs were one of the creatures that first got me into paleontology. I was always a huge fan of the Loch Ness Monster and the idea of a plesiosaur being alive today. When I would go swimming with my family as a kid, I would try to swim like a plesiosaur because I always thought they were really cool. I don't see a whole lot of them in media, so any chance I saw them made me really happy. But when I first conceived of the project, it was more just, what if there was something else instead of cetaceans? They were so engraved in our culture that I had to think of something that would be just as important and fascinating to fill that role. And seeing how they aren't as represented, I figured, why not choose the animals that got me into paleontology in the first place? I feel it's also important to note that one of my biggest idols when it comes to paleontology is Mary Anning, and she was one of the first people to discover plesiosaurs, so it's really only fair. I also got curious as to why she chose cetaceans for plesiosaurs to fill the niche of. She responded, "Well, as my previous point was stated, cetaceans are so integral to human culture and society, And while they are really cool, I figured it would be very fun to explore a setting or alternate reality where they didn't rise to power. The evolution of cetaceans has always been a proponent for how evolution works, specifically because of how quickly they rose to prominence. The evolution of whales is really fascinating, but what would we do if presented with an animal that is so integral to human society and has been around for more than 65 million years? That's one reason I really wanted to make this project. In historical times, whales were seen as these giant leviathan monsters, beasts of unimaginable size and power. But imagine an animal even larger with even weirder looking faces and bodies. Hemots are the whale equivalents, and they are even larger than whales in our reality. Just think of how cool and how endless the possibilities are of how different that might be, or how they might have even been revered just by their sheer power and size. Everybody talks about how intelligent orcas and dolphins are, but imagine something like that, but even smarter with weird serpentine creatures that are reptiles but look and behave nothing like reptiles. It could almost reach into the uncanny valley of things. As someone who's read some of Frilly's work outside of the Cetacean Alternative, I can tell you that she's very particular when it comes to the finer details of her projects. And it's no different here. She does her best to tackle every aspect of this project with as much realism and accuracy as possible, while also maintaining a great deal of the more fun fictional elements that come with these kinds of works. And when you have that, coupled with the amazing artwork done by Johnny Rodent on Discord, you have a really cool and interesting project. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Cetacean Alternative. The family of Piscangids are divided between three subfamilies: the Longuduridae, also known as the Dolos, the Ophidrachiae, also known as the Tikos, and the Naturovidae, also known as the Hemots. The largest and most diverse subfamily are the Dolos, which are divided into 6 genera, including genus Arenaclaris, genus Dolorangus, genus Muriltumis, genus Nomadicus, genus Auranticolum, and genus Ticomimus. And among the most plentiful of this subfamily are the Arenaclarids. And within the Arenaclarid family are the spotted dolos, the swamp-neck dolos, the tree-snake dolos, the Loch Ness dolos, the barrel-chested dolos, the Indian River dolos, the Amazon stalker or the Amazonian dolos, and the dolo moles. Characterized by having the longest necks out of any of the Longuduridae subfamily, these Piscangids, with the exception of the spotted dolo and at times even the swamp-neck dolo, live in freshwater environments like lakes, rivers, and swamps. Cetophians like the spotted dolos and the swamp-neck dolos are adapted to survive in all sorts of underwater environments. In the case of the spotted dolos, they're typically found in estuaries or river systems that lead to open ocean, as well as living within gulfs and bays. As their name entails, you'd be able to tell them apart from other Cetophians given the spotted patterns on their backs, which varies in color depending on their environments. Spotting these dolos isn't too hard considering they're typically curious animals that oftentimes poke their heads out of the water to observe nearby human activities, and they may even see it as a perfect opportunity to steal food from them, i.e. stealing some fish from a fisherman. Swamp-neck dolos can also be found in both saltwater and freshwater environments, but are primarily found in freshwaters, especially in, you guessed it, swamps. But there's a reason for this. The swamp necks have an interesting coloration, having a grayish-blue colored body, but a rotten brown colored neck with mottling of green, so that when its neck and head floats on the surface of the water, it gives off the appearance of a floating log. This especially helps with its ambush hunting technique that it uses when going after prey that wanders too close to the water's edge. The Loch Ness dolo, closely in relation to the swamp neck, was also built for the murky water environments, having sensitive snouts that are perfect for detecting prey within farther distances. Like many animals, several Cetophians have developed their colorations based on their environments. But in regards to the Arenaclarids, there are other features, some stranger than others, that these animals possessed. As the name suggests, the barrel-chested dolo has a very broad barrel-shaped chest, which is necessary for its large lungs that it needs for its underwater activities, especially during mating seasons. Part of the mating rituals for these dolos is that they will have to do a series of tricks and tasks to impress their potential mate, including dancing, hunting, building an underwater nest, and even organizing rocks in the pattern of the female's choosing. Like the swamp neck, the Amazon stalker also uses its neck to disguise itself within its environment, taking advantage of its title as having the longest neck out of any dolo and using it to mimic the movements of snakes to attract potential prey. Indian River dolos also have an interesting feature, that being the sensitive barbels on the underside of their face that are likely used as a sensory apparatus to help them locate prey in their murky water environments. Along with that, they also possess pores that help detect movement beneath the sediment. The tree snake dolo is among the most unique arenaclarid in terms of appearance, having a short head, a stockier neck, roughly textured skin, and several crests protruding from its neck and face with green coloring so that it gives off the appearance of a fallen tree. Unfortunately for these creatures, they're critically endangered due to deforestation, poaching, and failure to reproduce in captivity. The dolo mole has a more unconventional way of obtaining food, but regardless, it still works. Being the smallest arenaclarid, the dolo moles will partake in moling, where a group of them will stick their heads out of the surface of the water, and will continuously bring it back down, similar to the game Whack-A-Mole. Apparently, they do this around humans, especially during tourist seasons, in the hopes of getting easy food from them. Moving on from the arenaclarids, there's also genus Dolorangus. Among this group are the short-faced dolo, the Williamson dolo, the paddlefin dolo, and the frill-faced dolo. This group is primarily characterized by their tough and compact teeth that are made to crush hard material. The short-faced dolo, named after its bulldog-like face, is a perfect example of this feature, having a very strong bite force to break through tough exteriors, resulting in a diet of hard-shelled prey like sea turtles and crustaceans. According to an excerpt on the site, the shortened snouts are to provide a denser, more compact mouth to transfer more bite force to break through the tough shells of its prey with more success than any other dolo. Short-faced dolos are impeccable ambush hunters with staggering levels of patience. They will wait hours for their prey to come close enough for them to snatch in a lightning bite, and once the prey is within its jaws, there is little chance of escape. In some cases, some dolos among this group are more opportunistic hunters, like the strange but unique frill-faced dolo, named after the extended skin flaps on its face that give off the appearance of frills, which were likely used for sexual selection. Regarding its hunting habits, however, the frill-faced dolo will eat anything that's available to them, and since this family of dolos have a wider range of habitats, that means a wider range of food as well. But they have been recorded to regularly hunt cephalopods. Other dolos, like the paddlefin dolos, are omnivorous, feeding on sea plants and cephalopods and fish. Of course, there's more to these dolos than just their diets. They're also known for their more social aspects, with the paddlefins being amongst groups that can range to only a couple to literal thousands. But more times than not, they will maintain a long-form social group that ranges from 8 to 12 individuals. They also possess interesting features, like their paddle-shaped fins that they're named after, and their tri-pattern markings along their face meant to confuse its natural predators. Other dolos, like the Williamson dolos, who reside in European waters, are known primarily for their bright red and white neck colorations that the males display during mating season, along with dances that they perform to attract potential mates. This actually serves as an attraction for people who will go out on boats to view these dances and coloration from these dolos. What's also fascinating about these dolos is that their social abilities have allowed them to also communicate with other dolo groups like the paddlefins. Next up in the dolo subfamily, we have genus Moriltumis, a family of agile and fast-moving dolos that primarily inhabit open oceans. This family of dolos are made up of the common paddlesnout dolos, the diving dolos, the pygmy dolos, and the short-necked Pacific dolos. Among this group is the face of all dolos, the common paddlesnout dolo, as it is described to be the most recognizable dolo of all. As the site states, they are the most common dolos seen in aquariums and showcasing places around the world. Paddlesnouts are the dolos that most people think of when they hear the word dolo. Though despite this, human interference with their habitats, including poaching, overfishing, pollution, and the like, has caused the common paddlesnout dolo to dwindle in numbers over the years, leaving them to be an endangered species. Not all dolos are as well known though, like the diving dolo, who are much more adapted for traversing the deeper, darker parts of the ocean, which in turn makes them more of a rare sight compared to other dolos. They have weird adaptations that make them unique, like their weird elongated tongues that have a symbiotic bioluminescence algae at the tip of it that serves as a lure for prey. Pygmy dolos are also a rare sight for humans, mainly because they are naturally skittish animals and will oftentimes avoid human activities. They also live up to their names as being the smallest of all the dolos, only reaching lengths of 3.5 feet, while the longest group of the family, that being the arenaclarids, typically reach lengths of 14 to 16 feet. Lastly in this family are the short-necked Pacific dolos, whose overall build of having a short neck has allowed this dolo improved agility to move around at a quicker and more efficient pace, perfect for fast ambush attacks. It's also noted for its long, thin teeth that trap its prey when they interlock properly. Next, there's genus Nomadicus, known for their reproductive traits of the females giving birth to one pup at a time, and their abilities to migrate for long distances, seemingly for the sake of exploration, hence their name Nomadicus. This is a trait that will continue to be common with the Cetaceans. In many instances, they prove to be extremely intelligent animals to a degree where they're doing things that go beyond just instinct, which will be far more present as we continue. But this is one of the smaller families of dolos, only containing the Caribbean dolos, the skipper or bellowing dolos, and the wingfin dolos. The Caribbean dolos name is actually a misconception, as when they were first discovered by humans, it was by the Caribbean chain and it was thought that they were native to those waters. But in all actuality, they simply migrated over there. They're actually more native to the eastern North American shores, where their presence is known based on the loud barking calls that reach far distances. They're also fitted with a long tooth that protrudes from their mouth that are typically used as a defense mechanism, both against dolos and humans that get too close to them. However, in other cases, some people have gotten a little too close with dolos that are more intimate with one another, like the skipper dolos, which are described to be one of the most promiscuous of the dolos whose lifestyle is heavily centered around this trait. They jump from mate to mate, they partake in large-scale group intercourse, they sometimes use these intimate behaviors to settle disputes, and in some cases, the skipper dolos have even been documented mating with different species of dolos, though their offspring, should they have any, don't often make it. This social behavior has gotten the attention of many, and as a result, these dolos are often studied. However, not all of these studies are done ethically. One case involved a dolo trainer named Angela sexually abusing her male skipper dolo named Peter, and was fortunately caught and arrested for her very illegal practices. Lastly, there's the wingfin dolo, whose fins are specially designed to aid it in long-distance travels or migrations. What's even stranger about these dolos is that they have the ability to sleep swim, which makes it so that everything but the essential functions for movement is down when they're asleep. And should there be any obstacles in the way, their brain is active enough to activate a warning system, which then triggers the proper reflexive functions needed to avoid or overcome said obstacles. However, should the situation be more dire during this sleep state of theirs, there's the added precaution of having 3 to 5 conscious individuals that serve as sentries or guards. Next, there's genus Auranticolum, dolos that are known for their physical and social features, like having a shortened stubby tail, advanced communication system, their color variety, and so on. But what makes these dolos especially different are their toxic flesh. Within this family of dolos are the reef-stalking dolos, the teardrop dolos, the Bolivian dolos, and the tiger dolos. The reef-stalking dolos get their name from the osteoderms on their neck and back that gives them a rougher texture that's similar to the coral reefs they inhabit. This helps them blend in with their environment, which they use to hide from predators and for stalking and hunting their own prey. They also come in a variety of colors, which is dependent on the environment of the coral reefs, but usually the colors can be shades of blue, red, orange, green, white, and so on. The teardrop dolos also have vibrant colors of blues and oranges, but as their name entails, they're in a teardrop-shaped pattern along its flank. Despite being mainly herbivorous, feeding on seagrass and digesting it with the help of certain stones that it swallows beforehand, these dolos are known to feed on sea urchins. Considering sea urchins are also very toxic organisms, this amplifies the teardrop dolos' already toxic flesh. However, that hasn't stopped people from hunting and eating them. Apparently, if prepped right, teardrop dolo meat is considered a delicacy amongst people. However, this isn't the case for all of the Auranticolums, as the Bolivian dolo is a protected species and as a result have maintained a healthy population. They're known for their pinkish-grayish colorings and have wide pectoral fins with a single claw at the end of each one. though it's not actually known what they're used for. Some have speculated that it's for more sexual selection reasons, as the males have larger claws than the females. And finally, there's the tiger dolo, named after the tiger-like green and white stripes that they've developed as camouflage to hide within seagrass as potential prey passes by. When it does eventually pass by, the tiger dolo is able to shoot forward with a quick attack thanks to its strong flippers and hydrodynamic body that allows it to have that kind of reaction and speed. Unfortunately, due to hunting and overfishing, the tiger dolos have the threat of becoming endangered. Lastly, in the dolo family, there's genus Tiko. Don't be fooled, as much as this group might seem like they're in the Tiko family, given all of the similar traits, they're all still dolos. This includes the Tusk dolos, the mossback dolos, and the mimic Tikos. Some are more similar than others, like the mimic Tiko, also known as the shadow dolo. Along with being named after their similar appearance to Tikos, playing tricks seems to be a natural thing for these dolos. Because they're known for being mischievous and manipulative, they've been documented stealing food from people and other marine predators, they're prone to stealing eggs and hatchlings from the nests of seabirds, they'll work together in groups to get people to feed them, they'll mess with people that are out by the water, and they're even a regular nuisance to people who live out in houseboats that have to shoo them away from stealing their things. Despite their likeness to Tikos, the rest of this family have more striking features that distinguishes them from Tikos. The Tusk dolos, while not actually possessing tusks, do have fang-like teeth that stick out from the rest, though not much is known for what these teeth are used for. It's guessed it's meant for more combative and defensive purposes along with display. The mossback dolos are named after the green pygno-like material covering along its back that gives off the appearance of moss. Like most dolos with these kinds of adaptations, it's useful for blending into its environment. The Tikos are a very interesting group of pescangids, which are characterized mainly for their extended bottom jaw, giving them an underbite kind of look. Along with that, they're also known for having the longest, almost snake-like necks out of all the pescangids. In fact, over the years, they've been given the name sea serpents because ancient sightings of these creatures from sailors that have never encountered them before gave off the appearance of sea serpents when they would stick their heads and necks out of the water. They would be given the name Ticonus dinos, which is a combination of the Roman word Ticonus, meaning snake beast, and the Latin word dinos, meaning terrible. When put together, the Tikos were referred to as terrible snake beast. But what makes these creatures even more strange are their levels of intelligence, curiosity, social abilities, and in some cases, even sapience. Sapience is actually detected a lot amongst the pescangids as a whole. There are several examples within the dolos that we've already talked about that showcases their intelligence, like the intercommunication between different dolo species like the paddlefin and the Williamson dolos, the practice of using smaller dead prey to lure out larger prey as seen with the tiger dolos, who will use dead fish and crabs to lure moray eels out of undersea crevices, and so on. But things are different with the Tikos, as they've shown even more extreme levels of intelligence and sapience, as we will see here in a bit. Among this subfamily are genus Ticonus and genus Thantococcara. Within genus Ticonus are the common Tikos and the Arctic Tikos. The common Tikos are popular as they are depicted a lot in pop culture, likely due to their general curiosity that makes them an amusing sight. As a result, this has made them a rather popular wildlife attraction for the marine theme park Splash World. However, a documentary called Serpents: The Truth of the Tikos would expose the dark world behind this practice, shedding light on the poor living conditions that the Tikos were subjected to, along with the aggressive and unpredictable behaviors from them that would result of this. We'll talk more about this when we get to the media section of the site, but fortunately for the common Tikos, the documentary did its job and the practice is no longer a thing. Then there's the Arctic Tikos, arguably one of the most interesting and unique pescangid in the world. As the name entails, this Tiko could be found inhabiting the cold waters of the Arctic regions, but their bodies are built for long travels and so regularly visit warmer, more tropical regions as well. And in turn, this leads to a variety of colors, as the icy blues and whites that it possesses help it camouflage in its more northern environment, but it also has shimmering silvers and iridescent greens that's more suited for its tropical environments. But what makes this Tiko especially notable are its social and behavioral aspects, along with having the most advanced levels of sapience among any Cetacean. They possess a high brain-to-body ratio, allowing them advanced problem-solving skills for cooperative hunts, communication, and artistic expression. They're even closer to their social groups than other piscangids. But along with this, they're also known for domesticating emperor penguins by selectively breeding them into one of three groups: the Eastport Swiper, the Arctic Diver, and the Coastal Shrieker. It's suggested that the way this happened was that during one of their long journeys, the Arctic Tiko stumbled upon the emperor penguins in the Antarctic region. Becoming interested in the birds, some of the Tikos would stay behind to study and build their trust with them. Eventually, that trust would grow and a bond would form between the penguins and the Tikos in the same way a human will form a bond with a dog or a cat. Eventually, these penguins became pets to the Tikos. The penguin group would be given the name Harris by early explorers that witnessed these events. The name comes from the Proto-German word herd due to the Tikos essentially herding the Harris. At least that's what it looked like from the perspective of the explorers. There's many more examples that exhibit the Arctic Tiko's sheer level of intelligence. Many experiments and observations have been conducted and made that document certain aspects, like their self-awareness, for example. In one case, a mirror test was performed by the Portland Institute of Cetacean Studies in Maine, of which every Tiko that was brought to the institute passed. In one specific and amusing case, there was one subject nicknamed Diego, cleverly named after me, thanks for that, Frilly, who was documented putting various types of crabs on his head one by one, switching them out to see how they would look on him in the same way a human might try on hats. Another experiment at the University of Alaska's Marine Behavioral Laboratory tested the Tiko's problem-solving skills by putting fish in a sealed container that required a certain amount of steps to open. Using their fins and dexterous bottom jaw, the Tiko would manage to get the container open and access the fish. In other cases, Arctic Tikos have been recorded to understand how human tools work and using them for their own purposes. They've constructed shelters and storage areas for food and sleeping quarters. They not only use calls to communicate, but also gestures with their necks and fins, and so on and so forth. There's so much to this side of the Arctic Tiko, and it's genuinely all very impressive, but of course, with how long this video will probably end up being, it's hard to get into every little detail, which is why I continue to urge you to check out the site for yourself if you want to know more. But for the sake of brevity, we're gonna move on to genus Thantococcara. This genus of Tikos is known for the enlarged bumpy flesh that they possess at the top of their heads. Contrary to what you might think, it's confirmed that it's not an enlarged brain case and is actually just a lump of flesh sitting on its head. It's not for sure what it's used for, but some speculate that, like a camel's hump, it was used to store nutrients during points in time when food was scarce. And unlike a lot of the piscangids that I've already talked about, these ones are quite solitary. Within the family are the bumphead Tikos, the pygmy Tikos, and the azure Tikos. The bumphead Tikos are a strange case, because at one point they were thought of as some sort of myth. But this changed when a dead specimen was brought to public view by French-American explorer Paul Duchaillu in 1853. Initially, the bump on its head made many believe it was a Tiko born with a genetic deformity, but it was eventually discovered that this was its own species. Since then, its unique look has gained some level of popularity amongst the general public. While it's thought the bumps on its head were used to store nutrients, in the case of the pygmy Tiko, named after the fact that it's the smallest Tiko at 8 to 9 feet long, the bumps on their heads are thick with muscles that are used to give each other social bumps when their heads are above water. Apparently, this is to show affection towards each other. Though healthy in numbers, there's still plenty of threats the pygmy Tikos face, including being prey to some of the larger Tikos and Dolos, along with constant ocean pollution caused by humans. Then, there's the azure Tikos, which are also an interesting bunch, as it's theorized they may possess certain levels of sapience as well, and maybe even human levels of intelligence based on their aggressive behavior towards humans. Kind of in the same way Arctic Tikos have gained awareness that humans are responsible for many of their hardships, and in turn, have responded to them with hostility. Others seem to believe it's more for territorial reasons, but regardless, this hasn't stopped the many philosophical, moral, political, and even religious debates regarding its possible sapience. As the site describes, the word Hemot derives from behemoth, and rightfully so, as the Hemots are considered to be one of, if not the biggest animals on the planet. As you can already guess, the Hemots are the whale equivalents to this world. Despite that, their lifestyle is quite different, as the Hemots have larger diets of sea turtles, cephalopods, sharks, and even dolos and tikos. Unlike the rest of its Piscangid family, they don't typically have as long of necks due to their size and structure. There are two genuses within this subfamily, genus Balaenami and genus Neodracodon. Within genus Balaenami, there's the Leviathan Hemots, the winged Hemots, the northeastern thunder snakes, and the comb-toothed Hemots. These Hemots are fitted with baleen teeth that filter through smaller scale prey and massive throat pouches. The Leviathan Hemot gets its name due to its size reaching upwards of 30 to 45 meters in length and 85.5 to 340 metric tons in weight. It's a very common Hemot given its several depictions throughout the history of media and storytelling. This popularity is likely due to its size, but along with that, it's also noted that they're also very intelligent animals. One commonly referenced aspect of the Leviathan Hemot are the calls that they make to one another, and how the complexity of it may point to it being similar to language amongst this group. There's also other behaviors and social aspects to them that many find interesting, like how they're primarily led by a dominant matriarch and have more emotional and social intelligence that rivals that of humans. As a result, the Leviathan Hemots are continued to be studied through the Piscangid Research Initiative in the hopes of finding out more about its higher levels of intelligence. The Leviathan Hemot isn't the only one breaking records with its size, as the winged Hemot is named after its incredibly large pectoral wing-like fins. In fact, they're larger than any other fins of the Hemots, and given the vibrant patterns and gestures that they make during mating season, it's likely their main use for sexual selection. Their most striking feature is unfortunately also the reason why they're hunted and poached, as their fins are considered to be very valuable and thus puts them under the list of endangered species. What's even more unfortunate is that they aren't the only ones. The northeastern thunder snakes are the most endangered of the Hemots, as they have been the target of hemoling, which is the practice of Hemot poaching in case you didn't pick up on that at first. As early as the early to mid 1800s, hemolers have gone after these gentle giants, and despite the practice being outlawed nowadays, that hasn't stopped hunters from continuing their hunts, though conservational efforts have been made to keep the species alive. The comb-toothed Hemot also seems to have limited numbers, but not so much in population, but more so in sightings as they are the rarest of the Hemots. The first comb-toothed Hemot was discovered in 1892, and since then only 80 sightings have been made. One recurring sighting is that of an old Hemot nicknamed Ghost, due to her rare sightings and possibly even her lighter gray skin coloring. Comb-tooths were typically of a darker coloring, so it's possible her lighter complexion was a result of old age, though it's difficult to tell with limited references to work with. Ghost was determined by scientists to be the oldest one of her kind. According to them, she was likely born in 1734, making her around a remarkable 283 years old. Unfortunately, however, the old girl passed away in 2017, but her spirit lives on as her remains were taken and displayed at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Moving on to our last Piscangid group, there's genus Neodracodon. Whereas the other Hemots had baleen teeth, this genus consists of Hemots that are fitted with what the site describes as odd conical serrated teeth, meant for more fleshy prey. They're also fitted with large lungs, large swim bladders, and small eyes, which results in poor eyesight due to them being adapted for more darker environments. However, they've also developed sensitive pores and barbels to help them detect the waters around them to compensate for their poor eyesights. Within this group are the Gerundizos, the Medusan serpents, and the Neptunes or Puerto Rican Hemots. One of the things you'll notice immediately with the Gerundizos are their weird permanent crocodile-like grin, which is caused by their inability to close their mouths all the way due to their very large teeth, deadly to large schools of fish and squid. In turn, like crocodiles and alligators, they've developed palatal valves, which is an internal bodily function that allows animals like the Gerundizos to seal their throats to keep water and air from entering or escaping their body. The Medusan serpent gets its name from its hunting technique. They're ambush predators, so in order to attack prey at the right moment, they need to be as still as possible before making their move. Its grayish coat is likely used to help it blend into its environment, but that's not what former explorers initially thought. Back when this creature was first being observed by ancient Grecian explorers, they initially thought Medusa herself had turned the creature into stone to anger Poseidon, the god of the sea. Speaking of the god of the sea, that's what the Puerto Rican Hemots or Neptunes are named after. Notable for its bulky and compact build and vibrant blue coloring along its body, the Neptunes are considered to be one of the most powerful Hemots, as their rituals for male dominance includes neck bashing. This explains their thick skin and build, which makes them adapted for these kinds of brawls. With this level of strength and power, these Hemots truly earned their title after the god of the sea himself. So, we've talked a lot about the Cetaceans themselves and how their presence have affected many facets of life. However, one of the reasons why I love this project so much is that it also takes into consideration how media is affected by the presence of Cetaceans, which is something you don't see very often with these kinds of works. It just goes to show just how culturally significant the Piscangids are to the people in this world, and it mirrors how we portray animals like cetaceans in our real world. A whole section of this site is dedicated to this aspect, where a variety of media is explored, including literature, film, documentaries, and so on. In some cases, Frilly had taken classic works that initially featured cetaceans and replaced them with Cetaceans. Take Moby Dick from 1851, for example. In this story, instead of a giant sperm whale, it's replaced with a Leviathan Hemot. As a result, the themes and outcome of the story affects how the Hemots are viewed in this alternate world. In other cases, she explores how they might be depicted in film, from the low-budget flicks like 1961's Sea Devils, which is centered around a crew of sailors who go after a fleet of man-eating Tikos that mainly uses stock footage of real-life Tikos out in the wild and taxidermy Tikos for close-up shots, to the animated Disney Renaissance musical The Crown of the Sea from 1987, which tells the story of a prince set to rule the kingdom of Dolania, but gets separated from his home after they're attacked by the Ticonian Empire, their rivals who wish to rule the entirety of the sea. While films like The Crown of the Sea is held with high regard, other films like 1994's Paddles, a family film about a young boy who saves and befriends a baby Dolo, are seen as more controversial. The creators of Paddles opted to use real-life Dolos for their film, which consisted of two individuals, Minerva, a wild adult female Paddlesnout Dolo, and Tafiti, a Dolo pup, both of which underwent extensive training to prepare for their roles in the film, which unfortunately led to increased levels of stress, and in turn, led to an early death for both Dolos shortly after its release. In 2011, one of the contributors to the film, Lisa Johansson, would come forward with a documentary called The Secret of Minerva and Tafiti, which exposes the abuse and harsh conditions the two underwent for the film. The documentary would spark an uproar of backlash against the film's production studio Universal Pictures, which caused them to shelve any copies of the film from that point forward. The film would go on to be cited for its infamous backstory whenever the topic of animal abuse in the film industry comes up. But this wasn't the only expose made in favor of Piscangids. There was also the 2014 documentary Serpents, The Truth of Tikos, which I mentioned briefly earlier. The doc explores the harsh life of Tikos that are kept in captivity in sea-themed parks like Splash World, the corruption of higher-ups that run these companies, and its tragic consequences. For example, the doc covers an incident involving an Arctic Tiko named Danumo, who grew up in captivity, being separated by his mother, bullied by his tank mates, pressured to do tricks, and forced to live in poor conditions. One day, Danumo snapped during a training session with his trainer Nicole Rayum, which resulted in the Tiko biting and killing her. The company attempted to cover the whole incident up and even blamed Nicole for being an incompetent trainer. But when the doc was eventually released, Splash World would be hit with several lawsuits from families of other trainers who were hurt or killed under their watch, eventually leading to the company closing its doors under all of the pressure. As of today, the company is now defunct. While we're on the topic of more controversial works, there was also the book series of Land and Sea, which is a romance story between a female marine biologist and a male Arctic Tiko named Whisper. The book is set in a world where certain Piscangids are accepted as people, but are also at war with them. Whisper, who disagrees with the laws of his strict Tiko government, escapes them and stumbles upon a drowning biologist, Dr. Mara Davis, after her boat capsizes. From there, the rest is history. The two slowly but surely start falling for each other. In case you couldn't tell, this specific entry is meant to mimic those really weird interspecies erotica novels that Frilly and I both find pretty funny. Fun fact, Frilly is one of the bastards that keeps egging me on to make dinosaur erotica videos for my channel because, I don't know, big funny I guess. She's a fucking gremlin. Anyways, the book's author, Taylor Andrews, is, in turn, also considered to be controversial, as she believes in the notion that Arctic Tikos are people, not animals, considering their intelligence and sapience, though it seems that people are more mad at the way she decides to express this idea through weird and unethical ways within her books. On a more light-hearted note, some Piscangids eventually became stars in kids' TV shows as well, like Jerry and Friends, which debuted in 1975 and ended in 1981. It was an episodic series that followed the misadventures of a group of underwater friends, like our main character, Jerry Gerondiso, his nerdy friend Tammy Tiko, the jockish turtle Chris Shelbert, and their laid-back friend Jamie Jelly. Sometimes the group would get into spats with the show's main villain, Victor Pottis, the evil octopus, and his squid army. Then there's the animated Swirly show that debuted in 1993 and lasted until 1999. The show was based on a comic strip by Thomas Brown, which was first published in 1988. In this world, Brown was a friend of Garfield creator Jim Davis, but the two parted ways over a disagreement, which would prompt Brown to make his own comic, which would be centered around a Hemot father named Hemot Tebo, his teenage daughter Jolly Dolly, her laid-back hippie grandfather Pico Tiko, and their house pet Pinga Penguin. The IP would go through many iterations, including an animated series, a couple of reboot series, one of which was CGI animated, a couple of spin-off films, and even a live-action film. The IP to this day is still active, as a recent 2023 announcement revealed another upcoming movie. And finally, there's the critically acclaimed 2019 documentary Targets of Intrigue, directed by marine biologist Emily Park and narrated by Sir David Attenborough. It's an up-to-date doc that explores the lives, natures, and behaviors of various different Piscangids in ways that have never been explored before, complete with impressive cinematography, visuals, score, a realistic viewpoint of life amongst the Piscangids, and a cautionary tale behind many of the endangered groups. Targets of Intrigue is held in very high regard. Well, that was the world of the Cetacean Alternative. It's genuinely an impressive thought experiment with lots of thought and details put into its wildlife. Though this does beg a few questions that many who were aware of this project prior to this video have asked. For example, Frilly has mentioned people have taken an interest in the idea of other prehistoric creatures surviving alongside the Cetaceans. When I approached her with the same question, she responded with, "So I have thought about this a lot, and you are right when you say a lot of people have asked me this. But it's only fair when presenting a project like this and of this kind of caliber. The short answer, yes. The long answer, I haven't decided yet. If an animal group from the mid-Mesozoic era is able to thrive into the modern day, who's to say other animals couldn't have? I've explored a wide variety of groups. One that I'm really excited to explore maybe in the future is terror birds. Perhaps even a small group of Oneirognathids. I already do have plans on exploring other Cetophians and the like outside of Piscangids, including groups that fill roles of pinnipeds and some of crocodiles. But all of this is dependent on how the project turns out, as well as if I get any inspiration. I will say that since Plesiosaurs are very common and relatively large, biodiversity in this reality has a lot more megafauna when it comes to marine life. Larger organisms are only a byproduct because of larger animals like the hemots and Tikos. Some Tikos specialize in hunting sharks, so maybe some sharks are bigger. Maybe relatives of the extinct Archelon are still kicking. Maybe smaller Plesiosaurs survived? I've toiled with the idea of marine crocs still kicking around. There's so many possibilities that I can open up because of this, and all of this is determined if I explore it or not. Speaking of how the project has turned out, I also became curious of the overall general reception towards it since it was first made public. When I asked Frilly about whether the reception has been positive or negative, she stated, "It's been pretty split in the middle. Some people don't like the idea of them surviving into modern day, and other people are more open to the idea of it. I don't want to make this particular point too opinionated, but I feel like speculative evolution and biology as a concept is predicated on the fact of fun thought experiments coded with fun biological details. I've gotten a lot of praise for it because the idea is so new and a lot of people haven't really thought of it. Plesiosaurs in general aren't really considered much when it comes to the topic, but the majority of the people I've talked to through my email have discussed how much they appreciate the topic and how they find it very intriguing and promising. The people who are against it, I can understand where they're coming from, but I don't see the point in stifling a topic or idea because it doesn't fit realism. Speculative evolution and speculative biology as a whole has been a very diverse group ever since it first became mainstream. I'm not pointing any fingers at anyone, but I feel as though it shouldn't be thought of as a locked-in concept where nobody can be permitted to join in on the topic unless they have very specific knowledge. Now don't get me wrong, it's important to do research before covering a diverse topic if you want to be accurate and serious, but getting too confused on realism can often stifle the very concept and the fun of the project itself. What I'm doing with this project is expressing a fun alternate reality, and I admit that some details may not be scientifically accurate, but if speculative evolution was entirely scientifically accurate, it wouldn't be fun. Personally, I really like this way of thinking when it comes to speculative projects. At the end of the day, there's a level of artistic expression that comes with it, and with that comes some more outlandish ideas, sure. But in the end, it's what makes them memorable and interesting. And of course, this is still a very fresh project. No doubt there's still a ton to explore in this world. So this begs the final question, what's next for the world of the Cetacean Alternative? Frilly responded with this: "I'm very passionate about the future of it. That's one reason I'm glad it's gaining so much popularity, as I wanted to continuously update it until I run out of ideas for it. I already have a section covering Piscangids and media, but what about historically? What about mythologies? In-depth analysis of them? Rodent, the guy who does the art for it all, has been nothing short of a miracle in the production of my project. His art is amazing and is really helping me further imagine this world that I have built, and I hope in the future it can help other people gain interest with art and discussions and further details. I would like to further exemplify this project as an almost unfiction kind of thing, where it is almost entirely treated as if it were in the real world. The narrative that I've been trying to exemplify on the website is that of an explorer who studies Cetaceans, and as I continue to update it, I want to make it seem as realistic as possible. I want this to feel as if it's actually a real world thing. I want people to have discussions about it, and I want to talk to people about it, because this has been a passion project of mine, and because of how much work I put into it and how much thought I have dealt with it, I want it to thrive as much as it can. Right now, the website is pretty bare bones. We still need all of the muscle attachments and everything else to make it a fully developed organism. It needs nutrition, care, effort, responsibility, and most importantly, love. Thank you all so much for watching, and please, have a nice day.